Most people think the scariest part of the night is the darkness. They're wrong. The scariest part is when someone knocks and you realize they already know you're awake. My name is Claire Donnelly, and I live on a quiet street in Maple Ridge, Colorado, the kind of place where porch lights burn out before anyone remembers to replace them. It was a Thursday night, close to 2:58 a.m., when everything in my life shifted sideways. I had just come home from a late shift at the clinic. The town felt dead, the air cold enough that the trees outside clicked like old bones. I made tea, curled up on the couch, and let the silence of my house wrap around me like a blanket. I don't know what woke me first, the knock or the feeling that something was wrong. Seconds before it came, 3 taps, not loud, not frantic, just knowing. I froze. No one knocks at 3 a.m. in Maple Ridge. Not unless something is already very, very wrong. A part of me tried to explain it away. Maybe a drunk neighbor, maybe the wind, maybe a package mix-up. But then came the second set of knocks, this time faster, more certain. I walked to the door on instinct, keeping the chain latched as I leaned toward the peephole. And that's when I saw her, a girl. She was either 15 or 16 years old, barefoot, hair tangled, arms wrapped around her stomach like she was trying to hold herself together. Her eyes were red, not from crying, but from fear that had lived inside her for hours, maybe longer. "Please," she said when she saw my shadow. "My phone died. I just need to call my mom, please." Every warning sign lit up inside my head, every story I'd ever heard about traps, setups, and lures. But the nurse in me saw something else, shallow breaths, trembling fingers, bare feet on frozen concrete. She wasn't pretending, she was breaking. I kept the chain on but cracked the door 2 inches. "What happened to you?" I whispered. She shook her head hard, hair swinging. I need to call her, please." Against my better judgment, I let her inside. She stepped in so quietly, like she was afraid the floor would yell at her. I handed her my phone. She dialed fast, almost desperately. 1 ring, 2, 3, no answer. She tried another number, hands trembling so violently she had to use both thumbs to steady herself. Still no answer. I was about to ask if she wanted water when her eyes suddenly locked onto the window beside us. The blinds were slightly open, just enough for her to see outside, just enough for someone outside to see us. The girl's breath caught, her fingers went cold around my phone. Then I heard it crunch, soft footsteps walking along the side of my house. I felt the air in the room shift, the way it does before a storm breaks. A voice drifted through the night, calm, unhurried, male. "Lena." She flinched so violently that the phone slipped from her hand and landed on the rug. The voice didn't get louder, didn't sound enraged, just certain. "Lena, come on now." The girl, Lena, didn't look at me, didn't speak. She sprinted, she dashed through the kitchen, threw open the back door, and disappeared into the night without a sound. I hadn't even taken a step before another knock came, not frantic, not forced. The sound of 3 slow taps was heard. I froze in the living room, staring at the door like it might breathe. Another tap, then the handle shook gently, as if someone was checking how well locked it was. I called 911. My voice switched into automatic mode, the same tone I used with patients who were dying on the table. "There's a man outside my home." A girl came to my door. She ran out the back. "He's looking for her." "Stay where you are," the dispatcher said. "Do not open the door." Through the blinds, I saw him step into view, average height. Dark jacket, jeans. He had his hands in his pockets, seemingly anticipating a bus. He stood under my porch light, staring up at it. He was staring up at the light, not at me, not at the house. He was attracted to the light, studying it. The dispatcher asked, "Can you describe him? Is he armed?" I couldn't answer. I couldn't respond because my gaze wasn't fixed on his hands. I was looking at his face. It was tilted upward, expression soft, too soft, like he was admiring something beautiful. Then, without taking his eyes off the porch light, he said it again. "Lena, you know better." It wasn't a threat, it wasn't rage, it was a disappointment, familiar disappointment, and that scared me more than anything else. Blue and red lights finally flashed down the road. The sirens tore through the silence like a blade. The man didn't run, didn't flinch. He stepped backward into the shadows between the houses and vanished like he belonged there. By the time the police searched the property, he was gone. They asked for a description and wrote down my statement. One officer said it might be a panic runaway situation. Another said maybe the girl was bait. Both explanations felt wrong. I couldn't shake the way she looked at that window. She wasn't acting afraid. She was trained to be afraid. They promised patrol cars would circle the neighborhood. Odd they left. The sprinklers clicked on down the street again like nothing had happened. I didn't sleep. I sat by the window until dawn, a blanket wrapped tight around my shoulders. The next morning I checked the backyard, footprints near the fence. Small ones, barefoot, not mine. 2 nights later my camera pinged, motion detected. I opened the feed. A silhouette stood at the edge of my yard. The figure was standing outside the light source. The silhouette had its hands tucked into its pockets, pacing slowly. Not approaching, not leaving, just watching. When the police arrived, the figure had already vanished. It kept happening, always around 3 a.m. The distance remained constant, never close enough for a clear shot. I stopped turning off the lights at night. My shoes stayed by the bed. I carried a flashlight with me, phone charged. But the worst part wasn't him. It was her, the way she looked past me like she already knew what came next. The way she ran before I even understood she was in danger. No missing person report ever matched her. The police suggested that it could have been a scam or a lure. But lures don't tremble, scammers don't flinch at their names. Months later, my camera still pings occasionally. And occasionally I swear I hear a whisper in my memory, right before she ran, "Please don't let him take me back." Now every night when the world goes silent, I'm reminded of one truth: there are people out there who don't break into your home, they break into your fear, and once they do, they never leave. The first time I heard his drill, I was grateful. The second time I heard it, I realized I had paid a stranger to unlock more than just my front door. I had paid him to unlock my life. My name is Jordan Hale, and until last year I thought I was careful. I live in a quiet neighborhood in Brookstone, Arizona, one of those planned communities where every house has the same porch columns and the same aged shrubs. I'm a single dad to an 8-year-old girl named Maddie, and like all parents who live alone, I built my life around routines: lock the doors, verify the windows, set the alarm, sleep. That Sunday started like any other: grocery run, laundry, helping Maddie finish a math worksheet she hated. The sky was a white, burning bright, the heat pressing up from the pavement in waves. We pulled into the driveway with the trunk full of food. I carried the heavier bags. Maddie grabbed the cereal, the grapes, and the ice cream she'd begged for. I reached for the front door handle and twisted, locked. I patted my pockets and checked my keyring. Car key, mailbox key. The old gym tag was still in place. No house key. I tried to keep my voice light. "Hey, Bug, did you see Dad's keys inside the car?" She climbed back into the front seat, digging between the cushions. "Nothing," she said. "It's really hot." She was right. The kind of heat that makes your skin feel like it's shrinking. I checked the side door to the garage, locked, back slider locked. The keypad for the garage blinked a dead red, the battery long gone. Within minutes, the Arizona sun had us sweating, the bagged spinach starting to wilt in its plastic coffin. I pulled out my phone and searched. Locksmith near me 24/7, Brookstone fast response. The first result had a big green check mark. Local emergency, 15 minutes or less. There were numerous 5-star reviews available. A smiling stock photo shows a man holding a lock like a trophy. I didn't think twice. I hit call. He answered on the second ring. "Yeah, Locksmith Services," a man's voice said. Not polished, not scripted, just casual. "What's going on, boss?" I told him I was locked out with my kid and the heat was terrible. "Text me your address," he said. "I'm close. Be there in 10. He wasn't lying. By the time I had Maddie sitting on the shaded step with a wet cloth on her neck, an unmarked white van rolled up to the curb. No logo, no company name. The structure consisted solely of plain white metal with a ladder securely fastened to the roof. He stepped out, wearing a gray polo and dark jeans. Not overweight, not fit, just average. He was the kind of man you would forget within 5 minutes of meeting him. "Jordan?" he asked, already walking toward the porch. "I'm Rick. You called about the lock." He smiled, easy and practiced. He turned to Maddie. Hey there, kiddo, are you staying cool? The heat is intense. He reached into the van and pulled out a small cooler. Water, she looked at me. I nodded once. He handed her a sealed bottle. I told myself that was a positive sign, friendly, prepared, professional. He studied the front door for all of 5 seconds. Good news, he said. It's simple, deadbolts, not high-end. I'll have you in quick. He didn't use any tiny picks like you see in movies. He didn't take out a slim tool or a tension bar. He took out a drill. You're going to drill it? I asked. He shrugged. Fastest way, I'll replace the cylinder. Honestly, this one's cheap. I can put in something more secure. You'll be safer. Safe, I liked that word. He started drilling. The sound was harsh, enraged, and echoing in my bones. Metal dust sprinkled down like gray snow. In less than 30 seconds, the lock gave a sad little pop and the door nudged open. See, he said, all set, let me just swap this stuff out. He went to the van and grabbed a plastic organizer tray full of little bags. He pulled out a new silver cylinder, his hands moving quickly as if he had done this 1,000 times before. In another minute, there it was, a new keyhole, shiny and perfect. Better than the old one, he said. High security design, harder to pick. He held up 2 keys on a cheap ring. 2 copies, you want a third. Normally there's an extra fee, but since you got your kid with you, I'll throw it in. I felt stupidly grateful. The sun, the sweat, Maddie's red cheeks, it all eroded my caution. Yeah, sure, thanks. We went over the bill on his phone. The price was higher than I expected, with something called a complexity rate and emergency service fee added. But the cold air from the house was spilling through the open door. The ice cream was melting. Maddie looked worn out. I typed in my card details and signed with my finger. All right, he said. You're good. If the lock sticks, call me. You got the number. He waved at Maddie, nodded at me, and drove away. By dinner, it was just another story about Dad losing his keys. We found them later that night in the laundry basket. Of course, 3 weeks later, the heat had softened into evening. Maddie and I came back from her softball practice, dirt still on her knees, hair tucked under a cap. The sky was a streaky purple, the kind of color that looks painted on. I walked up the driveway, keys in hand. The front door was slightly open, not enough to look broken, just enough to be wrong. Every instinct in me went on alert. Maddie, I said, keeping my voice careful. Get back in the car, okay? Why? She asked. Just listen. Let's get in the car, lock the doors. She frowned, confused. But something in my face must have convinced her. She obeyed. I pushed the door with 2 fingers. It swung inward with a soft sigh. The house looked normal at first glance. Couch, TV. The lamp Maddie had knocked over last week was still a little crooked. I walked down the hallway slowly. Every step felt loud. The air felt thick, like the house had been holding its breath. Maddie's room, untouched, stuffed animals on the bed. There are posters hanging on the wall. Bathroom, fine. Hall closet, fine. My bedroom looked the same, until it didn't. My laptop was gone from the desk. The drawer where I kept my passport was empty. The small safe in the closet still locked, but on top of it, the jewelry box my mother had given me was open, half the pieces missing. I stared at it, trying to make the scene rearrange itself into something less violating. In the hallway, a patch of wall caught my eye. 3 framed photos usually hung there. One of Maddie's first days of kindergarten, one of my parents. A photo of Maddie and me at the park, with her on my shoulders as we both laughed. The first 2 were still there. The 3rd frame was missing. There was just a lighter square on the paint where the 3rd frame used to hang. That absence hit harder than the missing laptop. Someone had stood in my hallway long enough to decide what to take. I walked back outside on legs that didn't feel like mine and called the police. 2 officers came, a woman with her hair in a tight bun and a man with a worn-out face. The woman dusted for prints around the door. The man took notes and asked questions. Any signs of forced entry before today? He asked. The door was open when we got here, I said, but the lock doesn't look broken. Anyone else have keys? He asked. Family, neighbors? I shook my head. No, just me and my daughter. Any recent repairs? Contractors? The word hit harder than I expected. Yeah, I said slowly. About 3 weeks ago, we locked ourselves out. I called a 24-hour locksmith. He drilled the old lock and put in a new one. The officer crouched near the doorframe, running his finger along the strike plate. Then he took a flathead screwdriver from his belt and gently pried off the decorative cover around the cylinder. He made a little noise in his throat. "These are cheap imports," he said. "Easier to rekey or duplicate. The installer could have kept a copy and walked in whenever he wanted." I felt like the floor tilted. I remembered the white van. The smile was casual and genuine. The cooler was filled with water bottles. "I'll throw in an extra key for free." My stomach turned. The officers bagged a few pieces from the old lock that were still in the trash bin, the drilled cylinder I hadn't thought twice about tossing. "We'll file this as possible contractor fraud," the man said. "You'd be surprised how many fake locksmith outfits pop up. They buy ads, slap up a website, do a quick job, and then disappear with access to 100 houses." "Will you catch him?" I asked. He hesitated. "We'll try," he said, "but they move fast. Sometimes they're not even local." They left behind a case number and a card with a phone extension. That night I replaced the front door screws with ones 3 inches long. Then I lay awake listening to every noise the house made. The next morning I called the locksmith number again, straight to voicemail, no greeting. All I received was a generic automated message. By lunchtime, the website I had booked through had vanished, replaced by a generic blank page with Latin text. All those 5-star reviews I remembered, gone too. For the next week, every time a white van drove slowly past the cul-de-sac, my heart kicked hard against my ribs. I went to a hardware store in person and bought a real deadbolt. The old kind, heavy, solid. The clerk walked me through the installation step by step. "There," he said. "Nobody's drilling through that in 30 seconds. I nodded, but it didn't make me feel better. The damage was already done. I had invited a stranger to learn exactly how my door worked. I had watched him open it like it was nothing. A few days later, my neighbor Tara sent me a text. "Tara, hey, is this your locksmith guy?" She attached a screenshot from her doorbell camera. An unmarked white van was idling 3 houses down. The driver was just a blur behind the windshield. My skin went cold. I typed maybe. I then proceeded to delete it. Instead, I wrote, "Not sure, probably just another contractor. I would rather not say his name. I would rather not admit I recognized the shape of that van." That night, I sat in the dark living room listening to the tick of the thermostat. Every click of the new deadbolt sounded wrong, too high, too thin, like it was pretending to be stronger than it was. The detective called a week later. "We've got 3 similar reports in neighboring suburbs," he said. "The website, the van's description, and the method are all identical," he stated. "They hit a cluster of houses, then vanish. It could be a larger ring." "Are they dangerous?" I asked. "Breaking and entering is dangerous," he said. "But so far no violence has been reported. They get in, grab small electronics, documents, or anything they can flip quickly or use for identity theft. Still, if you see that van again, call it in." Although his voice was calm, my heart raced with anxiety. Months passed. I replaced the missing electronics. I didn't reprint that photo of me and Maddie. The empty patch of wall stayed as it was, a scar. Maddie doesn't remember much. To her, it's just the night the police came, when Dad seemed more serious than usual and told her everything was fine. However, on occasions when we're leaving after dark, she pauses at the door. "Can we leave one light on?" she asks. "So it looks like we're still here." I tell her that's smart. I don't tell her that now. Every time I shut the door behind us, a small part of me wonders who might be watching us leave. Because here's the truth I learned too late. We grow up thinking locked doors keep the monsters out. But occasionally, the monsters come with a drill, a clipboard, and a friendly voice, and we pay them to let themselves in. Predators don't always hide in the dark. Sometimes they wave at you in broad daylight and smile like they've been waiting. I learned that lesson on a Tuesday afternoon, the kind of day that should have been safe. My name is Emily Rowe, and I walk dogs for a living. Not glamorous, not exciting, but peaceful most days. I know every tree, every mailbox, and every cracked sidewalk square in Riverside Grove, the neighborhood where half my clients live. It is the type of place where residents wave from their porches, sprinklers mist the sidewalks, and golden retrievers extend their heads through backyard fences solely to greet passers-by. My favorite dog was Saffron, a 5-year-old golden retriever who believed every person she met was her best friend in a past life. She loved belly rubs, squirrels, and rolling in grass like it was made for her. That afternoon, the sun was warm but not hot. I had one earbud in low volume, more background noise than music. Saffron trotted beside me, her tail swaying like she had her rhythm section. We were halfway down Juniper Lane when it happened. Hey, a man waved from across the street. I paused. Saffron wagged harder. The man jogged toward us with quick, purposeful steps. He carried an empty blue leash, clean and bright. Have you seen a dog? He asked, slightly breathless. Black lab, his name's Shadow. Shadow had just taken off his collar 15 minutes ago. He loves the park. He had all the right elements. Baseball cap, windbreaker, friendly face, slightly worried tone. He didn't look like danger. He looked like a neighbor. We lost him just up the street, he said. Went toward the south end. I hesitated. I had another dog walk after this, but helping find a lost dog always felt like the decent thing to do. Sure, I said. We'll take a look. He smiled like he'd been counting on that. He looped the block. He didn't shout Shadow's name. He didn't whistle. He didn't look behind bushes or under porches. He just kept walking beside me, talking. My wife's printing flyers, he said. He's fast, he added. He loves the creek, he said again, but his eyes weren't scanning for a dog. He was watching me. Every time I subtly turned toward the direction of Saffron's house, he redirected us. Let's check this way, he'd say. Might have gone toward the trails. Maybe behind the new construction. My gut tightened. After 15 minutes, the houses were farther apart. Sidewalks gave way to dirt. A single backhoe sat behind orange fencing like a forgotten skeleton. Still no Shadow, still no flyers. There is still no evidence of the car he may have driven. I tried to sound casual. What collar was he wearing? I asked. He held up the blue leash. It matches this, he said hastily. I stopped walking. What street do you live on? I asked. Alder, he said. Alder. We had passed Alder 5 minutes ago. Okay, I said. I'll text if I see him. He stepped closer, smile thinning. It won't take long. Saffron let out a sharp bark, sudden, loud, like she sensed my pulse spike. That sound broke the spell. I turned and ran. I didn't care how it looked. I didn't care if he laughed. I just ran. This was not a task to be completed. This was not a gentle stroll, a full sprint. Saffron kept up beside me, confused but committed, her leash bouncing wildly in my hand. Behind us, gravel shifted. But I didn't dare look back. My backpack slid off my shoulder. The strap snapped. I left it on the ground. The only goal was distance, away from the construction lots, away from him. The first row of finished houses appeared like a miracle. I ran to the nearest one and pounded on the door. A woman answered with the chain still latched. There's a man, dog, blue leash, construction area, please. My words tumbled out broken. She didn't ask questions. She let me inside. I dialed 911 from her kitchen while Saffron drank from a cereal bowl. The woman sat down. 2 officers searched the area. No black lab. There was no man wearing a windbreaker. There was no sign of a blue leash. Did you get a license plate? Any tattoo? Any details? I shook my head. I didn't look back. They told me I did the right thing. Their tone said they wished I had more to offer. I returned Saffron late. Her owners listened, horrified but grateful she was safe. I went home and shook for hours. 2 days later, my phone buzzed with a local alert. Missing woman. Last seen NEARRIVRBND. Park. The sketch next to the text made the blood drain from my face. Same cap, same jaw, same eyes. I collapsed onto the couch, air stuck in my throat. I called the police again. They took my statement, really took it this time. They said they were looking into multiple leads. I followed the case obsessively for weeks. They never found her, never found Shadow. The existence of Shadow was never confirmed. After that day, I changed everything. No earbuds. I stopped using side streets, avoid taking shortcuts near unfinished homes. I carry pepper spray in my belt. I always carry an alarm in my pocket, but habits don't erase the memory. and fear doesn't disappear, it adapts. Sometimes on my walks, people wave from across the street. These are normal, harmless waves. I freeze every time. Saffron doesn't understand. She just wags harder. One afternoon, her owner asked, "Why don't you take her by the construction lots anymore? She loves sniffing the dirt." I just said, "We take safer routes." I didn't tell her that when we walk past that corner, I keep my head high and my grip tight, that my eyes scan every shadow, every parked car, every man with a leash. I didn't tell her how many times I replay the moment I turned and ran. What would have happened if I stayed polite? If Saffron hadn't barked, if I had followed him one more street? Predators count on politeness, count on hesitation, count on just being helpful. But they forget one thing: sometimes a dog knows before you do, sometimes instinct saves you, sometimes running is the only thing keeping your name from becoming a headline. They never found the missing woman, and they never found Shadow. But I know the truth. There never was a dog, just a man with a spotless blue leash looking for someone who loved dogs enough to follow him. The first package wasn't mine. The second wasn't either. By the third, I realized the boxes weren't coming to my house by mistake. Someone was using my address on purpose. And the worst one was the box with my name written by hand. My name is Noah Mercer, and nothing about my street in Hawthorne Bend, Missouri feels dangerous. It's the kind of place where mailboxes squeak, lawns look identical, and neighbors argue about recycling bins more than anything criminal. So when the first package showed up on my porch, I didn't think twice. Brown box, standard tape, standard label, except the name on it wasn't mine. Evan Brooks. The address is exactly the same as mine. The house number matches exactly. The house number and zip code are exactly the same. I assumed it was likely an error on the part of the courier. Mistakes happen. I set it by the mailbox so the rightful person or the delivery driver would pick it up. The next day there were two more, different names. Same address. I called the courier company. They blamed a sorting error, a temporary routing issue. There was no need for concern, but by the end of the week, the boxes kept multiplying. Different names, different handwriting, different return addresses from states I'd never even visited. My porch looked like I was running an online business. Still, my name wasn't on any of them. I told myself it wasn't my problem, until one afternoon I came home to find a package half torn open. The tape was ripped like someone had peeked inside, or wanted me to. I told myself not to look. Curiosity is expensive. I looked anyway. Inside were envelopes. There were dozens of such envelopes. The envelopes contained neat, shiny, brand new credit cards. Each credit card had a unique name. They were all newly activated. My brain couldn't make sense of it. Why my porch? Why is my address being used? Identity theft, forwarding scam, drop point. The terms blurred in my head. I lifted the box again and re-examined the label. My address was printed perfectly. There was no typo, not a glitch. Someone had chosen my home. That night I left the hallway light on. I checked the windows 3 times. Every car passing the street made my pulse jump. I called the courier again. They sent canned replies. It didn't help. 3 days later, everything escalated. I pulled into my driveway and saw 2 unmarked sedans parked across the street. 2 men in plainclothes stood on my lawn, badges clipped to their belts. "Mr. Mercer?" one asked. I nodded slowly. "Detectives, mind if we come in?" My stomach dropped. For a moment I thought someone had framed me. Inside, I showed them the pile of boxes. Their expressions shifted in the way that police often do when they realize the evidence fits together, but they are displeased with the conclusion. "Did you open any others? Did you use any of the cards? Did anyone ask you to hold packages for them?" "No," I said too quickly. One detective crouched and lifted a label. "This is a forwarding scam," he said. "People submit mail change requests for random victims and reroute packages to clean addresses like yours. They use houses like this as drop points before picking the boxes up." I swallowed. So someone chose my house at random. Most likely, not definitely. They took a few boxes, photographed the rest, told me not to open anything else and left. We'll be in touch, they said. The front door closed behind them with a sound that felt final. I stood there alone, surrounded by cardboard. That night I dreamed of footsteps on my porch. The next morning a new package sat at my door. This one was different. It had my name on it, spelled perfectly. There was no return address included. Just Noah Mercer printed dead center. I didn't bring it inside. I put it in the garage, like sealing away something toxic. I waited for an update from the detectives. Nothing. Days stretched. More boxes came. Each box bore my name. Each box bore my name in flawless handwriting. The kind of handwriting that isn't casual, the deliberate kind. Then things got worse. I opened my mailbox one afternoon and the key felt wrong. It turned too easily, like someone had changed the cylinder. I called the post office. Your forwarding request is active, the clerk said. My what? Your mail forwarding request. Everything is being routed to the new address. What address? I can't disclose that without a warrant. Her tone cracked. She realized how serious the situation was before I did. Someone wasn't just sending mail to me, they were sending my mail somewhere else. Someone was rerouting my life. That night I heard a soft thud outside. I opened the door. Another box, plain, small. There is no label present at all. It simply bears my name, bold, precise, handwritten. I left it there in the morning. It was gone. Only a faint drag mark remained. No footprints. There were no tire tracks visible. There was only a faint smear on the concrete. I shut the door and locked it. Twice. I installed cameras, all of them pointed at the porches, the side gate, and the driveway. The cameras help me sleep until they didn't. One night at 2:14 a.m. my phone buzzed. Motion detected. Backyard camera. My house has a tall wooden fence. You can't see the back porch from the street. I opened the feed. A person stood at the very edge of the yard. The figure stood just outside the motion light. The person was just a shadow. He kept his hands tucked into his pockets, still watching, waiting. The figure didn't move toward the house. The figure refrained from attempting to enter the house. Just paced slowly along the edge of the fence. I called the police. The figure had vanished by the time they arrived. 2 nights later, another alert was received. Same silhouette. The silhouette remains at the same distance from the camera, same posture, not approaching, just present. They were studying the house, studying me. The detectives said they were still investigating. They have not yet identified a suspect, no leads. These things take time, they said, but time was precisely what I didn't have. In the following months, more boxes arrived. I stopped opening them, stopped touching them, stopped answering the door when the bell rang. The mail became unpredictable. Some weeks nothing arrived at all. Other times, postcards addressed to strangers filled my box. One afternoon, I found a letter addressed to me, handwritten, neat, perfect. It wasn't mailed. It had been placed inside my mailbox by hand. Inside was a single sentence. You were easier to find than I expected. I moved back inside the house like I was walking into a minefield. I locked the doors, closed the blinds. I sat on the floor, clutching my phone and feeling my breath tremble. I waited for the next knock, the next thud. I awaited the next camera alert. I waited for someone to come claim their packages. But no one did. They didn't need to. They already had what they desired: my name, my address, my mail, my routine, my nights, my fear. Occasionally, when I walk back from the mailbox at dusk, a car idles at the end of the street. Not always the same car. However, the behavior remains consistent. Engine running, headlights on, waiting. Not long, just long enough to be noticed. The detectives eventually closed the case for lack of actionable evidence. The packages never stopped. I keep them in the garage now, stacked like quiet threats in cardboard form. A reminder that someone out there knows my name better than I do. A reminder that they chose me. Maybe randomly, maybe not, but choice isn't the scary part. The scary part is the last package I ever opened, the one with my name handwritten so perfectly as if the person who wrote it had written my name many times before. Some houses look abandoned, some feel abandoned, and some you only realize someone is living inside when they switch the light on at 3 a.m. I discovered this firsthand. My name is Adam Turner, and last winter I moved into a rental house on the edge of Willow Creek, a town so small the grocery store closes before the sun goes down. I needed quiet, a break, a reset. My job as a paramedic had burned me out, and after losing my mother to cancer, I needed space where everything wasn't constant noise. The rental was on a lonely stretch of road, one long field in front of the house and a single property across that field. An old farmhouse with a metal roof and a porch that leaned like it was tired of standing. My landlord said the house had been empty for years. Perfect, I thought. For the first 2 weeks, everything was precisely what I wanted. Quiet mornings, long walks, there are no neighbors stopping by, no sirens, no chaos, until the night I saw the first light. It was 3:11 a.m. I had gotten up for water. My kitchen window faced the field and the old house across it. Normally it was dark, a black shape barely visible, but that night a single window on the second floor glowed yellow. I froze. I told myself maybe someone was checking the property. Maybe the bank repossessed it. Maybe the landlord forgot to mention something. The light stayed on for 2 minutes, then it blinked off. No movement, no silhouette, just darkness again. I went back to sleep, but something in the silence felt wrong. The next night the light came on again, same window, same time, 3:11 a.m. exactly. The third night too. I finally asked my landlord. No one lives there, she said. There hasn't been anyone for years. Pipes froze back in 18. The house is basically gutted inside. Could someone be squatting? She laughed like it was ridiculous. Squatters avoid Willow Creek. Too cold, too empty. I didn't tell her the part that bothered me most. Every time the light came on, I felt watched, like someone across the field was staring straight into my kitchen. During the day, the house looked lifeless. Paint peeling, door warped, grass has grown tall around the porch. But at night, that one yellow window seemed alive. One night, I pulled a chair to the window and waited. At exactly 3:11, the light flicked on. Only this time, something else appeared, a figure. The figure was partially visible, merely a silhouette of someone standing behind the curtain, tall, still, not moving. I blinked vigorously, speculating that the light might be deceptive. But the silhouette stayed, not shifting, not turning, just watching. The incident occurred directly in front of my house. I stepped backward instinctively, hand gripping the counter. When I looked again, the light went dark. The silhouette vanished. Something in my chest tightened. Do not panic, something colder, recognition. Whoever was in that house knew I was awake. They were aware of my presence. The noise wasn't random. This was timed. I tried to ignore it, tried to sleep earlier. I made an effort to refrain from gazing at the vacant field during the night. But curiosity has a pull, and fear has a stronger one. I installed a cheap motion trigger camera on my porch. It wasn't pointed toward the field, just toward my own walkway. I told myself it was for peace of mind. At 2:03 a.m. the following night, the camera pinged. Motion detected. Front porch. My heart dropped. I opened the app. A person stood in the center of the frame, not close. The individual was not positioned near the door. The porch light is just a short distance away. They were facing the direction of the house. Still, she is dressed in something dark, possibly a coat, maybe a hoodie. Their faces remained hidden. They weren't approaching. They were waiting. I called the sheriff's office. Willow Creek didn't have a police department, just one sheriff and 2 deputies for the whole area. The deputy arrived 20 minutes later. By then the figure was gone. He shined a flashlight across the field, swept my porch, and checked the road. No footprints, he said, no tire tracks. He asked if I had enemies. I laughed weakly. Just an old house with a light that turns on at 3 a.m. He paused. The house across the field, his voice tight. That property's condemned. No power running there. I stared at him. No power. Breaker's been off for years. I didn't know what to say. He shrugged like he regretted telling me. Probably squatters using battery lamps. I'll check it out in daylight. He didn't sound convinced. Neither was I the next night. I stayed awake again, not to watch, but because I couldn't sleep. At 3:10 my heart pounded. At 3:11 the light blinked on. Only this time the curtain was open. No silhouette, no person, just an exposed room washed in yellow light. I leaned closer to the glass. There was something inside the room. A wall covered in pinned papers, photos. Handwritten notes. The notes contained lines of red string. I could make out only one detail clearly. There was a pinned photo of something that looked like a white house with cedar siding. My house. My throat closed. The light went out again. I told myself to call the sheriff again, but fear and disbelief tangled in my head. What would I even say? Someone across the field has a picture of my house pinned to a wall. It sounded insane, so I waited until morning. At 9 a.m., I walked across the frozen field. I walked across the frozen field step by step, heart hammering. The old porch groaned under my weight. The front door wasn't even locked. It pushed open with a hollow creak. Inside, the air was cold and stale. Dust coated the floor. Cobwebs hung like gray lace. It really was abandoned until I reached the stairs, footprints, fresh ones, leading upward. I followed them, feeling each step vibrate through the old wood. On the second floor, I opened the door to the room that held the glowing window. It was empty, no lights, no lamp. There was also no power cord present. The floor was empty and the air was cold. But the wall, that wall, it was exactly what I saw from my kitchen. Pinned photos, handwritten notes, maps, newspaper clippings, dozens of printouts. They form a complex network of observation. My house, my car, my schedule. I have a picture of myself unloading groceries. I took a picture of myself sitting on my porch. I also have a picture of myself sitting at my desk. The picture was captured from a distance. The picture was captured from the field. The image was captured through windows. The photo was taken several weeks ago. I backed away, hands shaking. Someone had been living here, watching me, tracking me. A floorboard creaked behind me, not mine. I spun around. The hallway was empty. But another sound came, a soft exhale. The sound emanated from behind the bedroom closet door. I didn't wait. I bolted down the stairs, across the field, slipping on frozen grass, lungs burning. I didn't stop running until I was inside my house with every lock secured. I called the sheriff. Deputies searched the abandoned house. They found nothing. Footprints faded. Photos are gone. Wall empty. No sign anyone had ever been there. The only indication that someone had ever been there was the single window that still overlooked my kitchen, exactly aligned, perfectly angled. It was a sight to behold. I moved 2 weeks later. I left Willow Creek without informing anyone except my landlord. She said she'd already rented the house to the next tenant. I didn't warn him. I should have. But some things sound less like warnings and more like nightmares. I still wake sometimes at 3:11 a.m., certain I'll see a yellow light blinking on across a field, even here in a new place, far away. Because once you've been watched like that, you never feel alone in the right way again. You only feel alone in the wrong way.